Boker Tov, good morning. Thank you for joining us. Today we have a special class about Parashat Lech Lecha, the third parasha of the Torah. הבוקר בעזרת השם, ברוכים הבאים לקולל אהבת ישראל בסן דייגו בלהויה. הבוקר אנחנו נעשה שיעור מיוחד על פרשת לך לך. So as we know, Parashat Lech Lecha is the third parasha in the Torah. You know, a little bit about the history of Avraham Avinu. You know, if we look at the last parasha, Parashat Noach, it says that in the last two verses in Parashat Noach, Yud Aleph, Lamed Aleph and Lamed Bet, there's a very interesting insight to who is Avraham and what's going on. It says, Vaikach terach et Avram beno ve'et Lot ve'et Haran ben beno ואת שרי, כלתו של אשת אברהם בנו, ויצאו איתה מאור כסדים ללכת ארצה, כנען, ויבואו עד חרן וישבו שם. ויהיו ימי תרח 5 שנים ו200 שנה, וימות תרח בחרן. So, אנחנו רואים פה, we see here something interesting. You know, we're about to start Parashat Lech Lecha. Even though Lech Lecha is the third parasha in the Torah, we know the history of Avraham Avinu is already in Parashat Noach. The last two verses of Parashat Noach says something amazing. It says that Terach is coming back to his land. You know, so here we understand that really Terach was born in Israel, the father of Abraham. A little bit about Terach. Terach, by the way, was the largest idol worshipping, so to speak, salesman and a manufacturer. He would make idols that actually spoke and moved, and he would sell them all over the world. He was none other than the one servant of King Nimrod. King Nimrod was the strongest, so to speak, general and military and killer in the world at the time of Terach. And Avraham Avinu already was headed towards Canaan. So the question is asked, why Hashem says to Avraham, Lech lecha el hamakom asher arecha? What's the purpose of Hashem telling Avraham, I'm going to, send you somewhere, go for you, Lech lecha. For you, the word Lech lecha is actually the same exact two letters, double, Lech lecha, which is in Gematria 100. We'll get to it, why 100. But in really to understand what's going on here is, why Terach was living, Ur Kasdim. Ur Kasdim means the city of fire and demons, right? Ur is fire in the Gemara, in the Aramaic. Kasdim is kashedim. It's like the demons. Nimrod, as we said, he was the king of the world at the time in that area. And he's what we call Khartumim. His people that knew how to read the stars came to him and said to him, listen, there is a neshama that comes to the world, and we see in the stars, there is one central star that's eating all the other 4 stars in all 4 corners of the world, that's consuming. It's a galaxy-like, a star, planet, that comes down from the heavens. It will be the one that will be able to change everything in the world. So Nimrod and his, what we call advisors, they're the first one that hatched the plan to kill all the boys that are born. It's not Pharaoh, by the way. Pharaoh is a secondary compared to Nimrod. Nimrod was the first one that says, let's kill all the boys. Why? Because he knew that the neshama of a boy coming to the world that would basically destroy him and all the system of belief in the world. When that happened, his mother of Avraham Avinu, her name was Amtalia bat Karnavo. Amtalia bat Karnavo was married to Terach, as we said, and she took, herself away from that area, and she gave birth to Avraham Avinu outside in the desert, and she found a cave, and she would have the baby by herself. The reason that Terach left Ur Kasdim is because Nimrod could not find this baby, and he says we have to kill him. So his wife advised them to all leave. Now, the beginning, when Avraham Avinu was born, the Zohar and the Gemara will teach us that Avraham Avinu was introduced to HaKadosh Baruch Hu when he was 3 years old in the cave. The Zohar will teach us something amazing. It says that, when after Amtaliah gave birth to Avraham, Amtaliah bat Karnavo, the mother of Avraham, she prayed to Hashem that he will take care of him. And she also had the Ruach HaKodesh that he will be something one of a kind. It will be Avram. It will be, the name they gave him is a father to many nations, right? Before they gave him the letter Hey, Avraham. Originally, Avraham was Avram. And she prayed to Hashem, and they say that the angel Gabriel came to the cave and fed Avraham every day. The Zohar says that he actually, by the finger of the angel, Avraham was drinking milk. A milk of a mother. And by 3 years old, he was developed physically to a 20 years old body. And when Nimrod finally got hold of him, Avraham Avinu was, as we said, Hashem was introduced to him in the cave. Avraham originally was praying to the sun. Then he saw the moon comes out, so he prays to the moon. Then he sees that they keep changing every day, and he believed that there is something above that manages those kind of systems. So Avraham gave creed to something that he did not know what to believe, but he knew that it was superior to everything else. AKA Hashem. And when he was caught by Nimrod and Avraham had a discussion. The Gemara will teach us, and also in the Midrash, that Avraham says to Nimrod, your idols are not God, and they will fail you. There is only one God. And Nimrod's God was the fire. So Avraham Avinu said to him, how can you believe in a fire? Water can consume the fire and shut it down, turn it off. So Nimrod says, why don't you at least pray for the water? And Nimrod says, why would I pray? Avraham says, why would I pray to a water? There is, the water is a result of the clouds. So Nimrod says, pray to the clouds and bow to the clouds. And Avraham says, why would I pray to the cloud? There's something above that brings the rain. The sun, right? The sun will heat up the seas, and the what we call Ed Yashke Tagan. There will be dew that will come out, the rain that will come out from those steams that cools off, and then Nimrod says to him, pray to the sun. He says, no, the moon comes out thereafter, so pray to the moon. On and so forth. Avraham was trying to convince Nimrod that there is something above, that he should give up his system of belief and believe in Hashem. And Nimrod did not. But Avraham says to him that the Gemara speaks of it, that Avraham says to Nimrod, let's see who wins that, and whoever wins, become each other's servant or give us a servant. You become mine or I'll be yours. And this is who, we'll see the outcome. And Nimrod ordered his people to make the biggest fire, Kivshan Esh. Kivshan Esh means fire from all sides, very, very powerful fire that nobody can ever come out of it. The Midrash will say that Nimrod built a sling-like that could shoot Avraham Avinu into the middle of the fire. So there's no chances of him even escaping from the sides or anything, in the middle of the fire. And as he was landed into the fire, the angel Gabriel says to Hashem, let me go save him. Michael was saying, let me go save him. Uriel was saying, let me go save him. And Hashem says to them, יש רק יחיד בעולמו ואני יחיד בעולמי, אני מצילו. אני ולא מלאך, אני ולא שרף. Just like Hashem said in the Makat Bechorot in Egypt. Hashem went and Avraham came out without any even a smith of fire or burnt of any of his clothes or anything. Avraham Avinu, by believing in Hashem fully, was saved. His brother, on the other hand, that we'll mention that his brother passed away, the father of Lot, Nimrod says to him, originally, the way he conducted himself with Nimrod, he says, let's see what happened to Abraham. If he's saved, I'm going to go with him. If not, I'll go with you. And needless to say, when a person waits for the outcome and then choose sides, is not really a person that believes in Hashem. If you believe in Hashem, you believe in Hashem from day one, from the beginning, and you know Hashem ilachem lachem v'atem tacharishun. So Avraham Avinu, as we said, survived this fire, and Nimrod would refuse to do and keep the deal. Instead, Nimrod gave Avraham his son, Eliezer. Eliezer will become Avraham's servant, and that was the son of Nimrod. And Nimrod gave the son, and as we know, Eliezer will become so righteous that he will be one of the 10th people that went to the heaven alive, like Elijah, like Eliyahu Navi, like Serach, but Asher. There's 10 people that never died and went to the heaven alive. And Eliezer, the son of Nimrod, which become the servant of Avraham Avinu, will make such tshuva and serve the tzaddik of the world that he merited to go to the land of the Gan Eden without passing away in the lifetime. So now that we have a little introduction to who is Avraham Avinu. Avraham, as we said, Hashem says to him, "V'omer Adonai el Avram, Lech Lecha me'artzecha u'memoladetecha u'mebet avicha el haaretz asher areka." So we said, of course, Hashem did not want to mention to Avraham where he's going. He says, leave everything. Lech Lecha, go for you. Really, this is a commandment to all of us every day. Lech Lecha, le'artzecha, me'artzecha. Leave all the essence of this world, because there's nothing that you take with you. Lech Lecha me'artzecha u'mimoledetecha. We all sometimes, many people say, I was born into chas v'chalila, this environment, or this neighborhood, or this family, or this city, and there's a lot of crime, so I'm part of it. What can I do? No, we are obligated to get out and leave the place we were at, leave the land we were at, leave even our own self that we became chas v'chalila, and become something better, close to Hashem. We say here, and Hashem says to him, Asher areka, I will show you, meaning that we already said that Terach was heading towards Canaan, and of course Avraham Avinu, Avram right now without the H, was 75 years old, and Hashem says to him, because you do this, you're doing this is one of the tests that you're going to be tested out of the 10 tests. We know the first one was in the fire with the Nimrod, and Avraham Avinu was born into one of the most wicked people and idolatry galore, as we said, Terach. There's the stories that Avraham Avinu was trying to even convert his father. Avraham Avinu became what we call fully engulfed in the belief of Hashem when he was 48 years old. And he and Sarah was converting a lot of people. And he said to his father, what are you believing in those idols? There's nothing but woods and stone, and they have no powers. How can you, believe in those? One day, Terach asked him to watch over his store, with all the idols outside. Terach was selling those every day. One day, an old man came and wanted to buy one of those chas v'chalila idols, statues. And Avraham says to him, how old are you? And the man says, I'm 7 years old. So Avraham says, this statue was just made this morning. Do you think it can protect you? It's a baby. And the old man left. And then a woman came. She brought what we call mincha. She brought solet to do a sacrifice for the idols. And Avraham Avinu said to her, which one do you want it to do it to? There were all kinds of statues, and she pointed out to the tallest one. So Abraham says, okay, I'll do it for you. And she left. She left the sacrifice, the minchat solet. And Avraham Avinu took a very strong stick and broke all the idols and put the mincha in front of this, the tallest idol and put the stick in his hand. And his father came and saw everything destroyed, and he says to Avram, what happened? Avram says, look, the tallest, strongest idol that you have, the lady wanted to bring sacrifice, they were all jealous, fighting over it. He destroyed them all. He's holding the stick. And look, he has the mincha in front of him. He has the solet, the wheat is right there, the grain is right in front of him, the sacrifice. So Terach says to him, what are you, crazy? This is our idols. This is just stone and wood. And the famous, עיניים להם ולא יראו, אף להם ולא יריחו, אוזניים להם ולא ישמעו. Terach says to Abraham, what are you talking? They have eyes, but they cannot really hear. They have, ears, they cannot really hear. They have eyes, they cannot really see. They have nose, they cannot really smell from. They have a mouth, they cannot really speak. Abraham says, you should listen to what he's saying. So how can he believe in them? How can he believe that they are God? And when Nimrod had heard that, Avraham Avinu was trying to convert his father, he wanted to kill both Terach and Avraham and all his family. So Terach took his family and moved out and headed towards Canaan. So we see here that HaKadosh Baruch Hu promised Avraham, when you leave for you, and you do, meaning leave everything and come to me, and come to the land that you need to be in, and come to the belief that you need to be in, which is already was. It says, "Va'asecha legoy gadol, va'avarchecha va'gadla shimcha, ve'heye beracha, va'avarchecha mevarchecha, ve'mekalelecha aor, ve'nivarchu becha kol mishpachot adama." Kadosh Baruch Hu basically saying to Abraham, if you follow me and you come, Lech Lecha for you. We say Lech Lecha is basically 50-50, right? The word Lech Lecha is 100. 50 is Lech, and Lecha is 50. 50-50. When we have Ishtadlut, we do our part, Hashem does his part. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Abraham, I will bless you, and you will bless the entire world. And whoever is going to curse you, I will curse them. And whoever bless you, I will bless them. And he says, וילך אברהם כאשר דיבר אליו אדוני, וילך איתו לוט, ואברהם בן 5 שנים ו70 שנה בצאתו מחרן. ויקח אברהם את שרה אשתו ואת לוט בן אחיו, ואת כל רכושם אשר רכשו, ואת הנפש אשר עשו בחרן. Avraham Avinu accepts the third challenge, the shal nisayon, and he moves and he takes his wife, he takes his nephew. By the way, Lot was Sarah's brother, and as we know, his father passed away because he did not really believe in Hashem, and he went from Haran. The word Haran means a place of anger. Haran, Charon apecha, when Hashem gets angry with us, chaz v'chalila, because we do a lot of sins. Haran was the place that Hashem was very, very upset with. And Abraham leaves that place when he's 75 years old. He takes his Lot. The question is why he was taking Lot with him. What it was so important for him to save his nephew. Okay, granted, this is Sarah's brother, we understand, but there's a lot of other nephews and nieces, and there's a lot of other family members. Abraham takes specifically this one nephew. Lot, Abraham had what we call Ruach HaKodesh Ledorotav. He knew the entire lineage of every person around him. And when he saw Lot, he saw something that nobody else saw or understood. He saw that from Lot will come the Moabite and the Ammonites. And as we know, from them will come Ruth, the Moabite, and from Ruth will come Ishai, from Ishai will come David, King Israel, David HaMelech, Shlomo, Mashiach ben David. He saw the whole lineage of this Lot. So it was worth saving him to secure the redemption. Later on we'll speak why Lot had this merit. What Abraham saw that nobody else saw. So it says that he took everybody with him, his wife Sarai, and he took the Rachashu et hanefesh asher asu. Avraham Avinu, as we said, was converting people. He and Sarah was converting thousands of people to believe in Hashem and not to believe in Nimrod and not to believe in all the idolatry. Avraham Avinu, by the way, when he left Ur Kasdim and Haran, we know that Nimrod lived for a very, very long time. Nimrod lived all the way to Esav. Esav is the one that killed Nimrod. Later on, as we see, when Esav comes to buy the lentil, the food that Yaakov was making for after Avraham Avinu passed away, that was the wake of Avraham. It was the Shiva, and Nimrod and Esav were fighting for a month. And even though Esav was much stronger than Nimrod, he could not win. And he went to his brother Yaakov. Ish tamim yoshev ohalim. Tam is Torah and mitzvot. Ohalim is Elohim. And he asked him, how can I win and defeat Nimrod? Because I'm much stronger, but I cannot do it. So Yaakov gave him the secret. He says to him, just so you know, the reason he cannot beat Nimrod is because Nimrod has an armor which is the clothes of Adam Harishon. Adam Harishon originally was very, very, very powerful. Nothing could hurt him except his own sins. And Nimrod knew about this garment, and he wore, and he was protecting him. So Esav basically understood now how to defeat Nimrod, and he asked him to fight without any armor, just hands by hands combat. And after 30 days, Esav finally killed Nimrod. When he comes to the tents of Yaakov, and he sees Yaakov making the red lentils, when he says to him, "Haliteni na mina adom adom hazeh," because I'm going to die, he was fighting for 30 days without any break. And when he saw the food, he says, "Please, I wanted to give me that." And Yaakov says, "I will give it to you, but there is the Bechorah that you don't know. You're not really interested in being a Jewish and receiving the Torah and doing the mitzvot. We'll do a trade. But before that, I will give you a lot of bread. So you don't say later on that I bought this or you tricked me because I was hungry." And Yaakov fed Esav with a lot of bread, and only then he sold him the red lentils, and in trade for the Bechorah, for the first rights of the Bechor, of the firstborn, which basically means to be the Bechor of the Goyim, to be Am Israel, to maintain the Torah and mitzvot. And of course we know that Yaakov also purchased the right to marry Leah, which was the Bechorah that originally was dedicated to Esav. So here we see that HaKadosh Baruch Hu take Avraham, and Avraham agrees to leave everything behind and headed towards Canaan, towards the land of Israel. The word Canaan in Gematria is 190. Originally, and later on we see that Hashem says to Avraham that your children will go and be in Egypt for 400 years. But originally the 400 is changed to 210 years. If we take the word Canaan, which is 190, and subtract the 190 from the 400, will be 210. Because of Avraham Avinu going to Canaan, and because of the Canaan were not behaving in the land of Israel, which is a holy land, they were vomited out of the land of Israel, and as a result, the people of Israel came out of Egypt 210 years instead of 400 years of slavery. So Vayavor Avraham be'eretz ad mekom Shechem. Avraham Avinu goes to Shechem. Shechem is Nablus. If you ever read the New Testament, the Christian believe that Hashem gave them a New Testament. Mary cheated on her husband. Hashem slept with me. She's lucky she's not married to an Israeli. But anyway, the Christian says that Me'arat HaMachpelah is actually in Shechem, in Nablus. A big mistake. Me'arat HaMachpelah is in Hebron, not in Shechem. Avraham Avinu goes to Shechem. Why Avraham Avinu went to Shechem first? Out of all places in Israel, he goes to Shechem. Vayavor Avraham be'eretz ad mekom Shechem. First he goes to Shechem. So Shechem, as we know, is Avraham Avinu was trying to do a tikkun to the sale of Yosef. Yosef was taken out of Shechem. That's why when Yosef, before he dies in Egypt, he at 110 years old, he swears his brothers and the people of Israel to take him out of Egypt and bury him in Shechem. Not Yerushalayim, not next to Me'arat HaMachpelah, not anywhere, but Shechem. Why? He says, I was stolen from Shechem and sold. I want to be buried in the place that I studied Torah with my father. As we know, Yaakov loved Yosef out of all. He was the Ben Zekunim, because they were learning Torah together all the time. And Avraham Avinu went to Shechem to bless the Shechem, that one day, Be'ezat Hashem, we'll get it. As we know, this is one of the purchased land. You know, there are 3 lands that Avotenu purchased in Israel. One of them is Shechem. Yaakov purchased the city of Shechem. Avraham Avinu purchased the Me'arat HaMachpelah and the field around it. And David HaMelech purchased Har HaBayit. There are 3 real estate deals that our forefathers saw that will be major contention and future, liars like the Palestinians and the Arabs saying that it's their land. But don't worry, they come from Ishmael. As we say, Ishmael, in the days of Mashiach, the Arabs will hear the name of Hashem and all of them will be scattered all over and will never be in Israel, not even one. So here we see is that Avraham Avinu goes to Shechem, Ad Elon Moreh. V'aknani az ba'aretz. Again, to mention the Canaanites, as we see, they were inhabiting, they were the first settlers that stole lands from the Jews. Eretz Israel has always been Eretz Israel, not Eretz Ishmael. It's very interesting. Avraham Avinu was born in 1948 to the Jewish count. And Hashem promised him when he was born that he will get the land of Israel. And interestingly enough, we got the land of Israel back in 1948, right? In what we call Hey Be'iyar. So we see here that Vayara Adonai El Avraham Vayomer Lezaracha eten et haaretz hazot. Hashem promised to him, I will give your land to your Zarecha is Yitzchak, right? And Yaakov is Israel, and we are the children of Israel, Bnei Israel. When you go to the UN today and you just read them the Torah, they will never, ever contest that Israel is not the land of Israel. So we see here that Avraham Avinu, he built an Mizbeach LaAdonai Hanir'a Elav, meaning that Avraham saw Hashem now that he's fully engulfed in Torah and Maasim Tovim. As we know, Avraham in Gematria is 248. He knew the entire 248 mitzvot aseh, right? There is 613 mitzvot. Very interesting. There is 613, which 248 are mitzvot aseh. Those are the positive commandments. And there is 365, the negative commandments, lo ta'aseh. And our body too, as we said before, I mentioned again, maybe for the new people here and also online, that our body has 613 parts, 248 organs, and 365 ligaments. So each mitzvah connects to a part in our body. And Avraham Avinu, after he does the Mizbeach, by the way, the Mizbeach was none other than an Har HaBayit, in what we call the Akedat Yitzchak in the future, and the what we call Sulam Yaakov in the future, the dream of Yaakov, the latter dream. And Avraham Avinu then, it says he drove. Vayisa Avraham aloch venasoa hanegba. He was driving and walking. Later on, we'll see something amazing. So we see here that Avraham Avinu, the Torah says in verse 8, Vayatek misham ha'ara, mikedem levet el. What's Vayatek? Many of us think we have all the amazing technology today in the world. You have airplanes, right? You have satellites, you have spaceships, you have all of this technology that can transfer people from vast distances, a certain amount of time. Avraham Avinu had a technology, it's called time travel. He would go from place to place When we see today the shows like Star Wars, when you say beam me up Scotty, like, it's not a new idea or anything. It started with Avraham Avinu. It's actually started with Adam. But Avraham Avinu, the Torah specifically says here in chapter 12, verse 8, Vaya'atek misham ha'ara, that he transferred himself in split seconds from there to the mount, what we call Bet-El. Vaya'atek misham, this is a form of time travel. The Gemara will teach us and our sages that they will come when the third Mashiach, when the third Bet HaMikdash will build in the days of Mashiach, that we're here right now, Be'ezat Hashem, we will be able, wherever we are in the world, to come and pray on Shabbat in the Kotel, and then go back to our homes. Now, wherever we are, we'll be able to do what Avraham Avinu did. Time travel. Vaya'atek Avraham, that means going from one place to another in split seconds. Imagine this technology. It exists, we just don't know it yet. Everything that we see today technology-wise, it's all come from our world, not from any other place. We just right now discovering the opportunities and abilities to, do this and understand this technology. But it's really merely a glimpse of the real technology that, exists in our world that we don't have access or knowledge or ability to understand. As for an example, we all have what we call smartphones, right? By the way, I always says, the smarter the phone, the dumber the people. Today, we don't forget any number. We used to remember 100 numbers. I personally used to know all my family's numbers, nephew, nieces, everybody by heart. Now, I can't even remember 3 numbers. I only remember just my children and my wife's number. So, smartphones, there is a lot of documents, pictures, videos, everything, right? When we send an email or a text or WhatsApp, you see a tangible things on your hand. You see an image, you see a video, you watch, you see a document, you send it. You don't really see it in the air anywhere. But the other person across the world receive it, right? In split second. They say in days of Mashiach, technology will be vast and fast. If you look 20 years ago, we were in the dark ages when it comes to this technology. And as we say in Hebrew, WhatsApp is mehashem kara, ma kara, right? WhatsApp is ma kore, like what's up. But it's really, if you take the word ma kara, is mehashem kara. It happens by Hashem. As we know, our prophets will teach us that when the days of Mashiach come, there will be knowledge in the world that surpass every knowledge. Even the Torah, we don't have to learn anymore. Will be mele'eh de'ah. So here, Avraham Avinu used this technology to time travel. Vaya'atek Avraham misham ha'ara. We know also that Avraham Avinu, once he saw Satan, right? We know Hasatan, by the way. Hasatan is none others if the word Santa, like Santa Claus, right? If you take the word Santa, it's Hasatan, right? It is what we call, in today's, you see a lot of Chaz v'Chalila Israelis and Jews all over the world celebrate Christmas and Sylvester and all the stupid holidays of the Goyim, and they think it's cool and we want to be like them, but in reality this is a deceiving method for the Goyim to, destroy our Torah and our religion. And Avraham Avinu saw the Satan walking crying in Jerusalem, and he asked him, what's going on? Why are you so sad? And the Gemara will teach us that the Satan says to, at the time it was King Solomon, he says to him, I have to take these 2 righteous people and I cannot find them. I need to find them and kill them, but I cannot find them. So King Solomon was also able to time travel, and he took these 2 rabbis and transferred them to a place called Bet-El, which is here in our parasha. Vaya'atek misham ha'ara mikedem levet-El. Bet-El, by the way, there is a city by Jerusalem. We don't see it. It's there. And Shlomo HaMelech transferred those 2 rabbanim into the opening of Bet-El, but then the Satan caught them right there and killed them. Because Shlomo HaMelech saw the Satan minutes later happy. He says, what happened? I thought that you were very sad. He says, I want to thank you. You helped me by time travel and transferring them. I was able to catch them in mid-air right by the opening and kill them. Avraham Avinu went to the city, Bet El, that again, it's there, we don't really see it. They say this is where Gan Eden is hidden as well. Vayat Ohala. Vayat Ohala means is to pitch a tent, but really Vayat Ohala is he saw the place of Hashem. Bet El, right? This is the house of God. Miyam ve'ai mikedem vayiven sham mizbeach la'Adonai vayikra b'shem Adonai. Avraham Avinu is also, by the way, trying to do a tikkun to Adam. Whenever Avraham Avinu will build a mizbeach, an altar, it was a specific reason to do something. Like he went to Shechem first to try to atone for the sale of Yosef. As we know, as we said, Yosef was sold in Shechem, and he was wanted to be buried in Shechem. He says, I want to return to where I left my father home. It was in Shechem. And Avraham Avinu did everything that he needed to do the tikkun, as we know, of Adam Arishon. And then Avraham, Vayisa Avraham aloch v'naso Negba. Then he went to the desert. Hanegba, we're speaking about Negev, but whenever there is a hail added to any word or place, I should say, for an example, Vayered Yaakov Mitzrayma. Right? Even though it's Mitzrayim, Egypt, but Hashem, when Hashem in the Torah add the letter Hey, that means Hashem guarantee protection and He'll be there with you. With Yaakov, same here with Avraham. Avraham went Hanegba, went to Beersheba, and Hashem says Hanegev will become Hanegba, right? So we'll be there with you. Vayi Ra'av Ba'aretz, Vayered Avraham Mitzrayma lagur sham, ki kaved Ra'av Ba'aretz. Avraham Avinu goes down to Egypt. You know, when he goes down to Egypt, this is another test. By the way, Avraham never asked Hashem to help him. You know, the Torah specifically writes Vayehi. Every time there is Vayehi, that means problems. Every time we say Vehaya, that's good. Vehaya, you know, as we said, what's Vehaya? It's the letter of Hashem, Yud He Vav He. Vayehi, Chaz Vechalila, it's missing. And it says that basically, when we say Vayehi, is where we have a problem heading. Avraham Avinu went down, again it's still Avram, not with an H. Avram, a father of many nations, went down to Egypt to live there. You know, this is one of the sins of Avram, by the way. And because he went to Egypt, that's why his children later on will be, Chaz v'Chalila, part of Egypt and the slavery in order to secure the redemption. And even when he goes to Egypt, he says to his wife Sarai, something amazing here. He says to her, he says, Vayomer el Sarai ishto, hinena yadati ki isha yefat mar'eat. You know, Avraham Avinu now sees, you know, is heading towards Egypt. They say that only when Sarah, when they got to the Red Sea, you know, Sarah lifted up her skirt just to really, you know, kind of, you know, not to get her clothes wet in the river. And Avraham Avinu just saw for the first time since he met her how beautiful she was. She was so beautiful. They say that she was one of the, out of the 7 most beautiful women that were created and, you know, that came to the world, she was the most beautiful. They say that she was even more beautiful than Chava. And, you know, Avraham Avinu only now noticed her beauty. Remember, they've been together for many years. They were a shidduch since they were in their 20s. And Sarai, as we know, married Avraham, and the two of them converted and converted many others. And Lot, the brother of Sarai, Avraham Avinu again takes him to Egypt with him. He doesn't leave him behind. As we mentioned many times, Avraham will always take Lot with him. He goes to Israel, he takes him. He goes to Egypt, he takes him. Come back of Egypt, he takes him back. You know, Lot and goes to Sodom and Gomorrah, he saves him there. There's a war between the 4 and the 5 kings. He goes and saves him. Always. Why? Because he saw the lineage of Lot. From him will come, as we say, King David, King Solomon, Mashiach ben David, Rabban Gamliel. Many sages will come from Lot because of Ruth the Moabite. So here we says that Avraham Avinu noticed how beautiful Sarah is, and he says to her, please, Anna, the Torah says, Na, right? Hine na. Na means, in a form of please, I beg you. Like we said to Hashem, El na refana la, or lo, El na refana. When we learned that from Moshe that prayed for Miriam, he never mentioned her name, but he says El na refana la. Meaning now, when it comes to na, is a big, to involve and to invoke Hashem's blessing in a request. And he says to her, don't tell them that you are my wife, tell them that you are my sister. We see here something amazing. If you notice, here and also later on with King Avimelech, when Avraham will say the same thing to Sarah again. Tell the king that you're my sister, not my wife. When Sarah was so beautiful, the Torah mentioned here that Avraham says, Leman yitav li ba'avurech. So I will benefit, so they don't kill me. V'chayta nafshi biglalech. Basically, Sarah never says anything back. She never agrees or disagrees. You never see in the Torah that Sarah says okay or no, what's going on, why do you lie to them? She's just quiet. Sarai is Sar Hashem, right? Sar Yud. She was half an angel. The Torah will tell us that, she told Avraham Avinu to buy Me'arat HaMachpelah. That's we read that in Eshet Chayil, as we say Eshet Chayil. If you look at the 7th verse, it says Zamema Sadeh Vatikachehu. The eulogy to Sarah was Eshet Chayil, a woman of valor, and she sent Avraham to buy this cave in the field. She knew that was the opening to Gan Eden. She knew that will be the burial for them, that Adam and Eve is buried there. And Avraham convinced her, and he hides her in a trunk. They went down. Avraham Avinu, when he comes to Egypt, it says here in verse 14, Vayehi kevo Avram, Mitzrayma, means that you don't mention Sarah here. It says in singular, meaning only Avram, he was headed in this convoy to Egypt, and he was the first one without Sarah next to him. Meaning that he was hiding her in the trunk. And he says here, Vayeru, it says, Vayeru HaMitzrim et ha'isha ki yafa hi me'od. The Zohar will tell us that when they opened the trunk where Sarah was hidden by Avram, there was such a light all over the world, and her beauty was seen to all the Egyptians at once, and they all were in awe of her. And of course, we see here that the Vayeru ota sare Paro, Vayehalelu ota el Paro, Vatukach ha'isha bet Paro. So we see that even the servant of Pharaoh realized what an amazing, beautiful woman she is. She should be with the king. The Arabs today and all over, they usually, and I say usually because the religious one will never ever cheat with a married woman. Ever. Until Saddam Hussein. Saddam is the word Sodom and Gomorrah. Saddam, Yimach Shmo V'Shem Zichro, he used to have a habit in Iraq, in all his palaces, whenever there was a beautiful bride getting married, that night he would bring and rape her in his palace. Those are, by the way, testimony from his own people. Unlike Saddam, the Arabs, the religious one, will never ever go with a married woman. They will first kill the husband, then they'll go with the woman. Avraham knew that. That's why he said to Sarai, tell them you're my sister, so I'll benefit from it. Alright? Because we have halacha, even Pharaoh knew that. When you want to marry somebody, right, you see who are our brothers. If the brothers are righteous, it will be a good marriage. If they're not, chaz v'chalila. Right? We know that all our forefathers met their wives at the Be'er, at the water well. Be'er is Torah, Mayim Chaim. Today, unfortunately, many of them meet their wives at the bar, right? Alcohol. Same letters, Bet Aleph Resh, B-A-R. Different kind of water. So, as we say here, the Torah says that she was taken to Pharaoh. And Pharaoh gave Avram a fortune. He gave him tzon uvakar v'chamorim v'avadim v'shfachot v'atonot v'gmalim. We see here something amazing. He treated Avram well for her sake, as we said, leman itav. And he gave Avram so many gifts, sheep and cattle and donkey and slaves and maidservants and female donkeys and camels. You know, it's very interesting why the Torah mentioned the female donkeys. Out of all the animals here, it says, ve'atonot, right? Mule. This is to speak of this Bilam Arasha. As we know, Bilam, he started the whole idea for the movie Shrek, right? The speaking donkey. As we know, he was sleeping with the donkey, the female donkey, Aton. You know, very, very disgusting. It's very actually popular in the Arab world, if you ever been to some countries in surrounding Israel. Anyway, so now that Sarah was brought to Pharaoh, they say, Vainaga Adonai et Paro negaim gdolim. They say that the moment Pharaoh was getting close to Sarai, Hashem actually gave 5 plagues of the 10 plagues that will come in the future on Egypt. The boils and the tzarat and the shchin and all this other physical, you know, that people had felt on their skin were punished by Hashem on Pharaoh. Those 5 plagues. And not just on him, on all his palace, all the workers, the servants, the advisor, every one of them. And Hashem says to him, this is the wife of Avram, not the sister. And Pharaoh, of course, he summons Avram and he says, what have you done to me? Why didn't you tell me? As if like now he's all righteous. Avram knew if he told him that that's my wife, he will kill him. Meaning Pharaoh now basically understand why Avram changed the story and why he told him that this is his sister and not his wife. And he says here, by the way, just so you know, the entire event from Avram getting to Egypt until he left is 3 months. In the Gemara in Masechet Sukkah, it will teach us that the whole time frame of Avram and Sarai coming to Egypt and being there, and after leaving, it was 3 months time period. And Pharaoh again give, by the way, more gifts to Avram and Sarai, and he sent them away from Egypt. They say that, of course, Pharaoh gave Sarai the land of Goshen as a gift, as inheritance, as an apology for thinking that she is the sister or trying to chaz v'chalila, marry her and all that. He gave her the land of Goshen. Technically, and not when I say technically, you'll see in days of Mashiach, the land of Israel will actually spread all the way from Iraq to Egypt. From the Nile, by the way, is in the land of Goshen, right? The delta, the water that comes from the Victoria Lake in Africa into the Nile and then all the way to the Mediterranean Sea. This is the land of Israel. Goshen, where we today is Cairo, Alexandria, everything that, where you see the entire greenery of Egypt belongs to Israel, belonged to Sarah. That's why Yaakov, when he went down to Egypt and before he dies, he says to his children, don't leave the land of Goshen. Stay there. Goshen, it was given to the Jewish people, to Hebrews. And as we know, Hashem says to Abraham, everywhere you'll step will be the land of Israel. Abraham left Iraq originally. He came from, as we said, Ur Kasdim, which is the Iraq area, from the river of Iraq, the Euphrates, Prat v'Achidekel, all the way to the Nile will be the land of Israel, and up to Turkey, by the way. So here we see is that Vayal Avram Mitzrayim. By the way, it's good to mention here that Pharaoh actually walked Avram and Sarai 4 amot outside of the border of Egypt. From him we'll learn that when a guest comes to our home, we're obligated to walk them 4 amot outside of our home. That came from Pharaoh. So even from a wicked man, we learn something of derech eretz sometimes. So we see here that they were given a lot of gifts, and he took with him Lot again. You know, we said, how can Avraham always take care of Lot? So we mentioned that he saw the lineage of Lot, but something else, that Lot, you know, did something that rewarded him with that. You know, it's one way to, you know, have an opportunity to get a reward, but there's another way to justify the receiving of this reward. You know, when Avraham Avinu lied about Sarai, Lot was next to him. When he says to the king and to the servants and to all of them that this is my sister and not my wife, Lot could easily says, what are you talking about? You're lying. And he will then be rewarded handsomely, because then Pharaoh could have married Sarai, because, you know, they will kill Avram. And he, because he kept his mouth shut and not told anybody that Avram is basically lying, he was merited to win the rewards in the future. That's why it's very important, very, very important, never to say Lashon Hara, never to lie. And of course, there is halacha in the Shulchan Aruch, never to chaz v'chalila, you know, say bad things about another Jew to the authorities or anything like that. It's very important to be careful with those things. So here, we have a few more minutes. Avraham Avinu comes up and he says that there were Avram kaved meod b'mikneh v'chesed v'zahav. You know that the Pharaoh sent him with so much wealth, just like the people of Israel will come. You know, if we see the whole episode at Avram going down to Egypt and coming back with the wealth, that's exactly, he was giving us the precursor to the people of Israel going to Egypt. Right? They will go out because of famine. There was a famine in the land, and the brothers went to bring food. Yaakov went with them because, you know, of course, they found out that, you know, there's better food there. Later on will be Yosef and all the whole story. But they come back, they said that he will get a lot of fortune. And it's exactly what Avraham happened with the people of Israel. And he says that Lot too was gifted a lot of gifts. Avraham was not, you know, he says, I'm giving too. My nephew is with me, he was quiet, I rewarded him handsomely. When they get to the land of Israel, there was a fight between the shepherd of Avram and the shepherds of Lot. They always fighting about the pasture, where to put their cattle to eat and everything. And Avram says to him, what is this fighting between us? We're like brothers. The Torah says, Al na tehi meriva beini uvencha, ben ro'ai uven ro'echa, ki anashim achim anachnu. Avraham Avinu says to Lot, we are people, but we like brothers. You know? Basically hinting to him that one day your people will become Israel. Even though you're now a people, not Israelis, not Jewish, but in the future, your people will become Jewish. Ruth will become Jewish, will convert. And he says to him, let's split up. You take the left, I'll take the right. You take the right, I'll take the left. Wherever you go, I'll go the opposite direction. The Torah says, "Vayasa Lot et einav vayaret kol kikar hayarden, ki kula mashka lifnei." He says that shachat, you know, Sodom and Gomorrah here. The Torah says before Hashem destroyed it, it says lifnei shichet Hashem et Sodom va'amorah kegan. So the Zohar will explain to us why Lot wanted to take Sodom and Gomorrah. Out of all places. You know, originally Sodom and Gomorrah, the Zohar will say that anything you planted in the ground, let's say you planted carrots and you took the carrots out with the roots will have diamonds attached to it and margaliot. The land of Sodom originally was like the part of Gan Eden. There was so much wealth under the ground that anything you planted, when you took it out, if you just put a shovel to clean and make a hole for a planting, you will find tons of diamonds and gold and amazing stones. And of course Sodom today is a different place after the sins of, you know, Chaz v'Chalila, that we know Hashem destroyed the 5 cities. That was the first atomic bomb. Until today nothing grows there. Today you can go there. You can go to Sodom and Gomorrah, which is south of the Dead Sea, and you still, usually in the desert, there's a lot of life. There's a lot of living things. There's plants. There's all kinds of animals. There's so much things growing in the desert. But Sodom and Gomorrah originally was a most heavenly place that yield a lot of gold and diamonds in the ground, and of course, not to mention the pastures and the greenery and everything that it had there. And when Lot, we see here the trait of the Arabs. From him will come the Arabs, and we know the Moabites and the Ammonites, and of course his daughters will sleep with him. And Lot has no what we call appreciation. Lo asir todahu. He was not for a second even had gratitude for everything that Abraham did for him. If Lot would had any gratitude, he would say to Abraham, you take this pastures, it's the best place in Israel. But no, he is instead, take it. This is the Arabs today. Whatever you give them, they always steal from the land of Israel. Without the land of Israel and the people of Israel, they'll have nothing. The land of Israel was desolate for 2,000 years until the people of Israel came back to it in 1948. Just so we know, there was always Jews in Israel since the days of Avraham Avinu. They never left. But when the people, as we say, Avraham Avinu was promised the land of Israel when he was born in 1948, we got it back in 1948. And when the people of Israel, after the Galut, the exile of Rome, where we are today, the exile of the Christians, that, Rome, that destroyed Titus, destroyed the second temple, until then, from that point, until Israel came back to the land was desolate. There was many hundreds of thousands of Arabs that took over, but nothing would grow for them. And we came back and look at Israel today. We supplied the Arabs everything that they need. Food, water, medicine. Gaza, for an example, without Israel will never exist. Even Sadat did not want Gaza, even though it was part of Egypt. They did not want it. Even King Hussein, the father of Hussein in Jordan, he killed all the Arabs, Palestinian, the Black September in 1970. He demolished and destroyed and killed 28,000 Palestinians in one night. Remember, the Palestinians never exist, only after the 6-day war. Everything today is nothing but BS and lies. And we have a lot of Jews, Chaz v'Chalila, that helps them and believe in that cause, so to speak, like J Street and some others. Speaking of Titus, Titus, he thought it was God. Hashem has very, very funny sense of humor. Hashem took one yatush. Yatush in Hebrew is a little tiny fly, right? A mosquito. And this mosquito went into his ear for 7 years. By the way, mosquito is the only creation that does not go to the bathroom. All other animals eat and go to the bathroom. Mosquito, there's a kind of mosquito that went into the ear of Titus for 7 years. This mosquito is sucking the blood of the brain of Titus. Finally, Titus jumps off a cliff and killed himself. And when he fell on the rocks, his head split open and the mosquito flew out. A big mosquito came out of his head. Our Gemara will teach us that this is the creation Hashem did on purpose to teach us that even today with technology and everything, we cannot even create a mosquito. Mosquito, as I said, is the only creation that goes to the bathroom. And it killed Titus. And it grew, the Gemara says, to almost the size of a melon, like. Imagine. A little mosquito. Titus thought it was God. So, let's continue. It says here that, as we say, Lot and Avram split, and there is a war. Vayi b'mei Amarpel. Amarpel, by the way, is Nimrod, is another name for Nimrod. Never ever give your children a name like Nimrod or Herzl or any stupid names like this that carries a lot of bad. And Chaz v'Chalila, you don't want your children to have bad life. Nimrod means Mored. He actually mutiny against Hashem. And he says that he was the king of Shinar. And we see here the whole story with the 5 kings and the 4 kings fighting. And at the end, we know that Sodom and Gomorrah is taken with all its wealth, and they, as a hostage, again, Lot has been taken a hostage. Avraham Avinu goes with Eliezer. By the way, Eliezer in Gematria is 318. The Zohar says that Avraham Avinu and Eliezer went alone to fight those kings, and they used sand, and they threw, and the sand became arrows and would kill everybody, and they won the war single-handedly. Some say in the Gemara and the Midrash that there was 318 holy warriors in Gematria Eliezer that went with them to win everything. And of course Avraham Avinu win everything again. He saves Lot again, as we said, because of his lineage to Melech HaMashiach, to Mashiach ben David. And he goes back, and again it says here, Vayavo Palit. Who is the Palit, by the way? The Torah here says the Palit is none other than the giant Og Melech HaBashan. You know, Avraham Avinu converted Og Melech HaBashan and did Brit Milah for him. So now comes Og Melech HaBashan and tells Avraham that, you know, his nephew is kidnapped. By the way, he was hoping that Avraham Avinu will die and he could marry Sarai. That's what the Gemara says. But of course Avraham win and everything, and he comes back and bring Lot, and he goes back to Beersheba, and first he goes to, as we said, he goes back to Mamre. Alone Mamre, by the way, is when HaKadosh Baruch Hu will come to him and tell him that he is going to have a child. You know, when the three angels came to visit Avraham, you know, as we know, one of the prophecy that had for Hashem is Alone Mamre. Hashem came to him within the trees of Mamre. Alon, as we know, is a giant tree, oak tree. Hashem come to him at that location. And Hashem says to him, I'm going to, basically here, he tells him that he's going to have this an amazing sight as a vision. He says here, Achar advarim haya devar Adonai el Avraham b'machazeh. So by the way, here we see YouTube, right? Pictures, videos is not a new technology. We know that, of course, Moshe Rabbeinu benefited from the first tablets and downloads from the iClouds, clouds of glory. The ephod, the iPad, is none other than what we see technology today, and we see everything that has to do with the secrets of technology. Moshe Rabbeinu, you know, saw all the videos, all the designs, all the pictures in the clouds of glory. It says, like, but in the Torah it says, Moshe Yaretilcha ba'anan, the clouds. That's why we hide today all our stuff in our clouds, iCloud. Why they call it iCloud? Why they don't call it like iStorage or server? It's all from the Torah. Make no mistake. So here, Avraham Avinu is promised that Hashem says to him that none other than your children would inherit the land of Israel. They'll be like the stars in the sky, like the sand. What's the difference between star and sand? When we are good and we have Bet HaMikdash, we are like the stars. We light up the whole world. We give direction to the world. When we are not, we're like the sand. The sand on every beach is, the ocean comes and move it, right? Take it from here to here, from here to here, but the sand's always there. Hashem says to him, like I promised you, Lo eten et hazer ela le'af echad. I'll give it to you. You know, will be just yours. You know, and Avraham says to him, what are you talking about, Hashem? Vayomer Avraham, hen li lo netata li zera, vehine ben beiti yoresh oti. Avraham says to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what children? I have no children. The only person I have is really my servant, you know, Eliezer, which is none other than the son of Nimrod. This is the guy going to get everything. I have no children. And Hashem promised him, no. Hashem says, V'i devar Adonai elav le'emor, lo yirshecha ze, ki im asher yitzeh mime'echa. Speaking of Yitzchak, hu yirishcha v'yotzeh oto achutza. So here the Torah says something amazing. By the way, this is the first time that HaKadosh Baruch Hu take Avraham outside of the world into the galaxies. The Torah, the Zohar says, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu says here, the Torah says, Vayotze oto achutza. He took him out of the world. Avraham was the first astronaut, so to speak. And he says to him, you see all the stars, you see all the galaxies around you. Habetna, look at them. look above and below, and you see the entire galaxies that I created in the world. By the way, if you want to know how many galaxies in the world, go to Masechet Brachot, Lamed Bet Bet. Go to the Tracket the Blessings, page 32, Amud 2, page 2. You'll see the entire calculation of all the galaxies in the world. It comes to 0.1 to 19 zeros, the power of 19. That's how many galaxies were created. Hashem says, Habetna hashamayma usforat hakochavim. Count the stars. Can you count them? It says that's how many of your children will be. You know, today we think we have 16 million Jews, but there's actually more than 1 billion. We started before China. We had a lot more children than Chinese. So he says, Vayomer elav, he says, Ani Adonai asher hotzeticha meur kasdim latet lecha et haaretz hazot lerishta. He says, this is the land I'm giving you, not to anybody else. By the way, here, you know, the first Israeli astronaut, Ilan Ramon, right? He was the first Israeli astronaut. And Ilan Ramon, by the way, when he went up to what we call the galaxies, to the spaceships above the world, he took with him the Bible that was a Bible that was used by his father or his grandfather that, you know, was murdered in the Holocaust, Zichrono Livracha. And when Ilan Ramon was in space, he called Rabbi Lau, the head rabbi of Israel, of the Ashkenaz, Kehillah, and he asked him, he says, I'm the first Jewish person here in space, and I want to do at least keep Shabbat in space. How do I do it? The Rav, the head Rav, Rabbi Lau, Kadosh Baruch Hu Yishmor Oto, he says to him, I'm not sure, but let me have, I'll check and I'll have an answer for you. Ilan Ramon was then given the understanding that every 16 and a half hours he needs to keep Shabbat for 1 hour. Some say it was different calculation, but the amount of the rotation of the space and the speed in relationship to the weekdays, every 16 hours is Shabbat. So Ilan Ramon kept Shabbat. But something amazing happened. You know, Ilan Ramon, even though we say he was the first astronaut in space, he was also the first astronaut, a Jewish astronaut in space, Israeli, to die before. You know, when Columbia came back to Earth, it was amazing. Columbia, if you remember, was destroyed the moment it hit the atmosphere. And our sages and some of NASA people noticed something amazing. When Columbia was heading towards Earth, it was exactly minutes before Shabbat. It was on Friday, if I'm not mistaken, it was February 1st, the year 2000, if I'm not mistaken. For sure it was on Friday night. And the moment the Columbia entered the atmosphere above Texas, it broke apart. It was exactly as Shabbat entered the land. It was the exact moment and seconds that Ilan Ramon was killed entering the land back on Shabbat, on Friday night. There's a professor in Israel, is in Machon Weizmann. He discovered a lot of the codes of the Torah, and he found out that Ilan Ramon is hidden here in this parasha in a skips of 11 letters. When Avraham Avinu was taken out to the atmosphere to see the galaxies, as Ilan Ramon was also out in the galaxies in space, and his name is hidden in this parasha. Very, very amazing. You know, of course, Hashem does the Brit Ben Abetarim. You know, Hashem does the covenant with the sacrifice and the what we call Hashem tells him that he needs to take 3 heifers, 3 goats, and 3 rams, and a turtle dove, and then he needs to basically cut them into pieces and take this content. You know, he says that, you know, he can cut them in the center and place each piece in an opposite counterpart. The bird, however, did not cut up. All the animals cut except the turtle dove, the bird. You know, they say that the bird of prey descended upon the carcasses, and Avram drove them away. It was an amazing kind of things to do in a sight, and that's where Hashem promised him that even though your people will go into Egypt, for 400 years, ve'inu otam 400 shana, ve'gam et hagoy asher ya'avdu dan anochi achrechen, and they'll come out berechush gadol. When Avraham Avinu was promised that the people of Israel will go to 400 years slavery in Egypt, they come out berechush gadol. Avraham Avinu asked Hashem, what's the rechush gadol? What is this immense wealth that you promised for our children to come out with? So Hashem says, I'm going to give them the Torah. Avraham Avinu, is Jewish, Israeli. It was actually Hebrew. First Jewish people were in Mount Sinai. Everybody that received the Torah became Jewish that day on Shavuot. Avraham Avinu says to Hashem, listen, I know my children. They need a down payment in order to understand and read the Torah. Because when you're poor, it's very hard to learn Torah. You worry about Parnasa. So Avraham says, thank you for the Torah, but our children need a little bakshish. They need a little cash. So Hashem says, no problem. I'll give them both. I'll give them also the wealth of Egypt. Everybody, vayetzu berechush gadol. All the gold and the silver and all the wealth of Egypt came out with them. And of course, the Torah is really the rechush gadol. That's the one essence of receiving the blessing. And as we know, Hashem says to Avraham, לאמור, לזרעך נתתי את הארץ הזאת, מנהר מצרים עד נהר הגדול, נהר פרת. So here we see really the borders of Israel in the future, when Be'ezat Hashem, the third Mikdash will be built in Mashiach and Tchiyat HaMetim, which I think we are in the times of this kind of era now. All the prophecies coming to life. Hashem says the land of Israel will be from the Nile to the Euphrates, which is basically from Iraq to Egypt. This will be the land of Israel. And don't worry about real estate now in Israel. When the time comes, you'll have the right spot. And it says here that when Pharaoh sent Sarai and Avram out of Egypt, he gave them his own daughter, Hagar. Hagar, if you rearrange the letter, means Gerah, a convert. And we know that Sarai was barren, and she said to Avram, she says, why don't you take my servant? And maybe, because of this mitzvah, I will ebaneh mimena. Maybe I will benefit from her. Sarai, as we said, she was actually smarter than Abraham and more holy than Abraham. Sarai says, take my servant. Why she said that? This time Sarai is barren and she cannot have children. There is halacha that says if a couple cannot have children and it's okay by both of them, they can, the husband can marry another woman just for the sake of having children. And Sarai knew that and understood that, and that's why she said, "Leman ebaneh mimena," right? Ulai ebaneh mimena, meaning that because of this mitzvah, I will marry the same mitzvah, the same outcome. It's amazing. The word Hagar in Gematria is 208. The word Yitzchak is also 208. It's a measure for measure. Sarai wanted to continue and guarantee the receiving of the land of Israel to Abraham's son, not to Ishmael, Hagar's son. That's why when the angel came to Sarai, and Sarah, and changed her name, it says that you'll be pregnant. Sarah says the Torah, Vatitzchak bekirba. The word Vatitzchak bekirba is actually Yitzchak and Rivka. She then understood and saw the prophecy of her son and his wife. And here, as we said, she gave Hagar and received Yitzchak, measure for measure, 208 by 208. And here we see something amazing that, when Hagar became pregnant and had a child, she started mocking her own boss. She started mocking and laughing at Sarai. She says, you're barren, I'm going, my son will carry on, blah, 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 blah. Sarai threw her out. By the way, when Avram went and complained to Hashem, he says, look, what is this? Hashem says, what are you talking about it? Go listen to your wife. Listen to Sarai. When Sarai ordered Hagar and Ishmael to be sent away from their tent and from their everything, she saw the future of what the Arabs will do to the children of Israel. And she was trying to prevent this even back then. And something amazing happened. The Torah will tell us that when Hagar, when Avraham Avinu sent Hagar, he gave her just water and a little bread, and he put Ishmael on her shoulder. Right? And Hagar takes her son and throw him out by a little tree and wait for him to die. This is amazing, It says here that his own mother, this is, by the way, the trait of the Arabs. His own mother throw him and wait on the sideway, they say, in a distance of almost 50 amah, and she waits for him to die. Jewish mothers or fathers, for this matter, will never, ever, ever give up on the children. They will always do anything to save them, and most likely die before them if need be. Arabs, on the other hand, and we see that today, fathers and mother, and we learn this from Hagar and Lot, they give up their children to die. They send them, like for example today, all the kids that they were sent to explode themselves with the, a bomb belt and any explosive like this on their body. That came from Hagar. Hagar gave up her son to die, not saving him, even though she could. Same with Lot. When the angel came to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, what Lot says to them? Take my daughters. The Zohar will tell us that was Lot. Sodom and Gomorrah, that was the worst, city of being gay. And all they wanted to do is Chaz v'Chalila have their ways with them, with these men. They thought it was men, but it's angels. But the Zohar says that when Lot says, take my daughters, he was telling them, listen, they haven't sinned in this sin like you like. Take them. Who gives up their daughter? We know if somebody Chaz v'Chalila come to me, or any Israeli or any Jewish person, this father and mother will stand first. Nobody can touch the children. They have to kill us before they get to us. The trait of the Arabs is here, hidden in Hagar and in Lot in this parasha. And here we see is that even though Hagar was sitting on a water well, she did not see it. We in our life have a lot of opportunities to do mitzvot, and we sit right on the water well and we don't see it. Our eyes are somewhere else, our minds are somewhere else. And Hashem sends 5 angels. By the way, this is the most angel were ever sent to one person in the history of the world. And each angel gave Hagar a different blessing. But one of them, says something amazing. It said that Ishmael, one day he would listen to Hashem, but not now. Ishmael, one day he would listen to Elohim. But until then, Vehu yeh pere Adam. This is what Daesh and the killer of Arabs today, we see how Arabs kill each other. They don't care really for each other. They don't care for anything. The word Islam is the letter of Samael, right? Satan. Islam also in Hebrew, Salam. There will be no peace. Vehu yeh pere Adam, will be like a beast of a man, not really a person. We see behavior of Arabs that inhumane. We see it all the time. Of course, the media will never tell you that. They will never tell you how horrific Iran is every day, killing and murdering, cutting people's hands, and all kinds of atrocity all over the Arab world. You see all the wars that with each Arab countries among their tribes. This is come from here. Pere Adam. There will be a wild beast. Yado bakol v'yad kolbo. They will always want everything that's not theirs. They will never be happy. That's why the word Muhammad, right, the so-called prophet, is the only prophet that has losses all the time. Muhammad comes the none other than, what's Muhammad? What's the root name of Muhammad? Is Chemed. Chemed means from the 10 Commandments, Lo Tachmod. You should not covet something that's not yours. The Arabs always covet things that are not theirs. No matter what, they're never happy. No matter what country they go to, there's chaos. No matter where they are, there's problems. It comes from here. Pere Adam, the Torah says. And as we know, the Torah even says that he yado bakol v'yad kol bo ve'al pene kol echav yishkon. Like, this is the group of the Arabs that no matter where you put them in all their Arab countries, there's problems. And he says that finally Hagar understand that. And finally Hashem opened her eyes. And we see here something amazing. Even though that we have Avraham has a son with a Gerah, with convert, Hagar, the daughter of Pharaoh, a princess. Even her father says, better you be with the Jews than would be with the Egyptian. Imagine this. A father gives up his own daughter. He understands what Judaism is all about. He understands what the Israelis are all about. We are the only nation that take care of its enemies every moment of the day. No other nation does that. If you go to any other nation, they kill their enemies every day. We, the Hebrew, the Israelis, the Jews, take care of our enemies in Israel. Today, Gaza, for an example, the entire system, food, medicine, electricity, everything you want come from Israel. Same thing with the Arabs. When we came to the land of Israel, we help all the Arab farmers. Jordan, we still give them water to drink today. We bring people that, in a war of Syria and Turkey and people all over the world. We are the only nation. Why? Ashrei HaGever. David HaMelech, he opens Tehillim and he says, Ashrei HaGever. What do you mean Ashrei HaGever? Gever in Hebrew means man, like, Gever. But really, it's not Gever. What happened with the ladies? King David was discrimination against women? Chaz v'chalila. No, we know he had 20 wives. 20, wives, they say that, David HaMelech had 21 children and 20 wives. His son had 1,000 women, 700 wives and 300 concubines. And Shlomo HaMelech had only 3 kids. So, David HaMelech says, Ashrei HaGever. What's Gever? Gever is really the acronym of the 3 elements of a Jewish person. Gimel is Gomle Chasadim. Right? We're always kind. We have Tikkun Olam. We do Chesed. Bet is Baishanim. We are very humble. And, when you see a Jew that's not humble, Chaz v'chalila, that means he has no Torah in him. No Yirat Shamayim. Baishanim. Gimel, Bet, and Resh. Right? What we are? We say Gomle Chasadim, Baishanim, and Rachmanim. Resh is we're merciful. We have mercy on all creations. Hashem, we've even said to us, why are you about to sing Shirat Hayam when my children are drowning? Only that's why it says, Az Yashir Moshe. Only then Hashem allowed them to sing, when they understood that they should not really be happy when the loss of their enemies. So Be'ezrat Hashem, I wish all of you, both here and online, a wonderful week. And may we always have the merit to Lech Lecha. I'll finish with, I said in the beginning, Lech Lecha in Gematria is 100. 50-50, right? Lamed is 30, Chaf is 20. 20, right? You have 2 and you have 32. So altogether 100. Avraham Avinu, we know that he accepted Hashem fully when he was 48. And Hashem says, V'Adonai barach et Avraham bakol. What's bakol? Bakol is Gematria 52, meaning ben. The real rewards, when Avraham Avinu was 100, he got a ben, 52. 48 plus 52 is 100. When we merit to go in Lech Lecha, when we walk for us in the ways of Hashem, we will merit bakol. V'Avraham, HaKadosh Baruch Hu berach et Avraham bakol. By the way, there's a Zohar says that Avraham Avinu had also a daughter named Bakol. When it says, when Avraham Avinu went to bury, right, Vayilech Livkota, when he went to bury and eulogize his wife Sarah, we see that the word Livkota has the Chaf very small. If you read Livkota without the Chaf, is Levita. He went to cry and eulogize Sarah and her daughter, named Bakol. So Be'ezrat Hashem, we will always be blessed Bakol, with son and daughters. and may Hashem will merit us in Mashiach soon. And I appreciate all of you watching here. Again, Kollel Ahavat Israel. This class will be posted on our website, Nes HaTorah. And today and every Tuesday, Be'ezrat Hashem, we have Partners in Torah at the JCC. And please mark your calendar for the Shabbat project that's coming on the 14th and through the 17th in San Diego this month in November. On the 17th, we have a day of learning in the JCC all day. There's lectures. You can come and learn. There's all kinds of rabbis and scholars and a lot of people that want to be teaching and learning together. Again, it will be on the 17th of November. You can find it on Partners in Torah San Diego. You'll see the schedule. It's called Tapestry and Doing Jewish. The portion of Doing Jewish is sponsored by the Shabbat Project and Partners in Torah. And we are Partners in Torah here, all of us. Remember, Kol Israel Achim, Ahavat Israel is the most important thing to bring Mashiach faster. So thank you so much and have a wonderful day. And twice as good today for Tuesday. We'll see you next class. Thank you. Bye.